People are probably wondering why there's an Australian talking on the Baggies Out podcast, but basically, yeah. So I'm Andrew Robertson. I am an Australian pilot. I started ballooning in the late 70s when my father started, and I was 4 years old. So earliest memories I have is being thrown in the back of a car and being taken off into the countryside to go ballooning. Got my license when I was 17 in the 90s and started competition pretty much straight away. So been a pilot for 30 something years, been competing for about the same, instructor, examiner, commercial pilot, done a bit of everything over the years.
Nice. So we'll jump in, I guess. So you mentioned you got into competitive ballooning pretty much right away.
Yeah.
Did your dad also do competitive ballooning, or was it just something that you were interested in?
Yeah, so again, some of my earliest memories, Dad ran the 1982 Australian Nationals, so he was very involved in the very early days. And I remember as a kid running around getting, the autographs of the pilots in the program and things like that. Yep. I thought this was pretty cool. Then, when I started, I pretty much just finished school, started university, and I've generally been fairly competitive anyway. And having been around ballooning for so long, I wasn't really very interested in just going for jollies and flying across the paddocks and things. I needed a purpose.
Right.
And I'd had a bit of a break, as all teenagers do. They don't want to do Dad's thing, and I took up kayaking. But then when I got back into ballooning, my first event was at Mildura, which was a proper pool competition run by Musashi. And, this is kind of cool. I can get back into this. And that was my driver.
Nice. So I guess you've been around for competitive ballooning. Like, how you've seen it grow? Like, what have you liked about how it's changed? Where do you think it's going?
So I have been through it all. So I started in the days of throwing, as you call them, baggies or markers into the fields that are 3 kilometers away from your target, spending hours tramping through forests trying to find these things to measure them. And I started in those days, but then moved obviously through the whole technology part. I am a technology nerd. I've always been sort of an early adopter of the technology, and I have very much seen how the sport has changed. And to be honest, it's probably changed in my benefit because it really is starting to obviously favour people who are very familiar with tech. So I've always, when I've been competing, I don't fly as much as a lot of people. Obviously, competitors who are commercial pilots flying every day are much more time on, burner time, whereas I've been very much be very familiar with the tech, be very familiar with the rules sort of approach to competition. And that kind of has made up for the lack of flying that I generally do. So, there's two different ways you can play the game, and I certainly favour the rules and the tech side of it. So it's going the way I like. I mean, I still love throwing a baggie at a target. There's nothing more satisfying, but I can also see the efficiencies that can happen in competitions, and they can become much more of a thinking game than just being told where to fly and getting there.
You like to remove I guess you can remove eliminate the errors on the tech and the digital side, but then
I mean, I've always said, if especially in Australia, where we're competing against people who are flying over Melbourne, for example, every day, and they are so good at hitting their targets, and they know where they're going and they get there. But I guess I always know they're going to outfly me doing that. But if it becomes a more complex task, or there's more strategic thinking that's going on in the tasks, or it really is reliant on how you're using, whether it's Aussie Explorer or the Balloon Live stuff, that's where I hope is my advantage.
Right. So I guess you mentioned sort of the task sheets, or not task sheets, but like flying the tasks. So like when you sit down, you get a task sheet. What's your process then with
I guess having flown a lot of competitions over the years, I very much have my routine. And I guess it starts prior to going into the briefing, where a lot of people standing around kind of guessing what the director's going to call and things like that. And I just completely eliminate that. I don't want to hear what people are thinking, because you're never going to get it right. So I just try and go into a briefing having eaten some food and be chilled. sit down with the task sheet, and I pretty much do not listen to a word anyone says in the briefing. I'm just heads down on my laptop planning the flight. The weather information you get at briefing is very good, but I tend to find, because we fly with a windsond in our team, so I'm using the most up-to-date weather, knowing that they'll give you good forecasts and you can kind of know what's happening for the rest of the week, but I'm very much focused on the now.
Right.
So I'll sit there and just sit down with that task sheet, plan it out. I'm very much I write things on the task sheet. Like, there's important information on the task sheet that I know that I've made errors on previously, marker color, log a goal number, things like that. I just write them in big black Sharpie on the piece of paper. Because I know when I'm flying that piece of paper is going to be on the bottom of the basket on the floor. So I need to be able to see it. And I also know that as soon as you start getting creative and changing the order of how you fly tasks and things, suddenly wrong logger goals are being used, wrong marker colors. And whilst they might not be a huge amount of points, they all matter.
Yeah. The competitive ballooning is very much a game of like margins.
Yeah, absolutely. And whilst 25 points for a wrong marker color might sound like not much, I've come fourth and missed a podium because of 25 points. So every point matters. And that's a big part of it. But yeah, so briefing on the task sheet, I pretty much will go through it. I've worked enough with directors. I'm now very familiar with every task sheet that gets published on Watch Me Fly. So I'm very much understand the thinking of directors. And I think when a lot of people start, they think the directors are out to trying to make it tricky and hard for pilots, where the reality is they're trying to make a very successful flight for you. Yeah. So there's no hidden tricks. They're not trying to really catch you out on anything. It is been planned out as a pilot would plan out a flight. So you just got to get that mindset of having a logical thought pattern around it.
You mentioned having seen like stuff that task directors have done. That would actually, we're getting into Watch Me Fly, but that would maybe be kind of cool as like almost like a report card for event directors of like what kind of style they end up doing or something. Or
absolutely. I think there is a group of us, and I won't name names because it will highlight how nerdy a lot of people are, but during a competition, especially like a Worlds or a Nationals or something, we'll all be sitting at home waiting for the task sheets to come up. So it's almost armchair ballooning, and we'll see the task sheet. We all sit down in Aussie Explorer, plan the flights out ourselves as if we were flying them. If, for example, because we use Aussie Target to do tracking, we have often the tracks for the Australian team, so we can sit there and see what they're doing and get angry at our screens that they've made the wrong decisions and all those sorts of things. So being an armchair pilot really helps, because you do start really thinking outside of competitions what you could also be doing and practicing.
Nice. Yeah. I like that idea of like, I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one that will pull up task sheets as they're going in other events and like I'll put them in like, ooh, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, but also I think the other thing is, to your point around the directors, is directors have styles, and so there are certain what they're potentially going to do. Like Claude Webber, for example, I've flown a couple of his competitions and at the Worlds, and you always know he's going to throw a hare and hounds in there because he loves to fly. And you've got other directors who will 3D shapes, and others who will just do the more vanilla, the first 3 tasks in the rule book. So you kind of get to know going into an event what you're likely to expect. Yeah. But always got to be open for them suddenly being creative and throwing a curly one in there. Yeah.
Or if they have like a assistant director that then sort of takes the wheel and it's like, wait.
Yeah. But I think in combination with the flying area you go to, you kind of know going into an event, like if they send you a list of 30 common launch areas, you know that there's a lot of selection for them for launch areas and also target spots. Where if you get, here's the 2 launch areas, you kind of know, all right, we're going to be fairly limited in what we're doing. You kind of get a feel for the types of tasks to expect as well.
Yeah. So going back to like the task sheets and stuff. So what's your setup look like? So like once you get into your basket, like what do you have? Everything.
I try and keep it pretty basic. I'm not one of these have a massive board with all your tech hanging off it. Like I run Aussie Explorer, Aussie Target on just a Surface Pro that just is attached to the side of the basket, running it as a tablet. I run my GPS to the computer is also my BLS. So I'm always, what's on the computer is the exact data that my Balloon Live app's going to be feeding off. So if my computer says I'm over the target, it's not two different GPSs giving different messages. It's all one system. Then altimeter and radios. And then I always fly solo. So, I'm in a smallish basket with 3 large tanks in it. So I don't have a huge amount of space. But yeah, I don't like too much stuff hanging on the sides, like a big map board or a big computer board. I just find guaranteed I'm going to be at a target, and that's going to be the side that I'm trying to throw my marker off. So
yeah,
I can just flip my tablet into the basket and out of the way, get the ropes out of the way, and then just have a clean ability to wind a marker up.
What size balloon are you flying?
Funny one. So some people know me for flying the smiley face, Balloony McBalloon face. That's a Kavanagh EX60 racer. I also have a Kavanagh 65 racer. That's my older balloon. I'm actually starting to use the 65 more now, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I've got a lot more hours on it, and I just find that I generally fly that balloon, and then I was always saving the face as my competition balloon, and I'd jump into it and realize I can't remember how to fly the thing. So I've probably got 90 hours on that, and I've got 360 hours on the other one. So I just feel I tend to do better in that one. Plus, my son James is now starting to fly competition as well, so he's lighter than me, so he gets the 60 and I get the 65. So, as much as I'm trying, I'm not getting any lighter, so my balloons are just getting bigger. So this year at our Australian Nationals, I'll be flying the 65 and he'll be flying the 60. So yeah, it's a good size. Because I'm flying solo, and because especially from Australia when you're freighting balloons, the smaller the better. But I couldn't go any smaller than that. I just need that size.
Yeah.
For the fuel.
So the 65, I guess you guys, I was assuming you went off of cubic meters, but you go off of cubic feet?
Yeah, so 65 is 65,000 cubic feet. So I have no idea what that is. The other model. It's the same as what most people are using. It's around that same. I think a few people now are starting to use more that sort of 77,000 cubic feet if they're flying Navigator. That's a much more two-up sort of balloon, where the 65 is, when you stick another person in there, I'm typically having to drop a tank. So,
I don't think I would struggle to have another person, because I have a 65 also, and it's like if I put someone else in there like for a fun event, it's pretty much two tanks unless it's real cold.
Yeah, no, exactly right. So yeah, that's kind of my setup. as I said, I fly solo. I think because I'm comfortable enough with the tech, I don't need a navigator, and I'm also I'm a bit of a control freak, so I would hate to be having other people making decisions and making potential mistakes. I'd rather make the mistakes myself. And I think also at Worlds, I just feel more comfortable that things can get a little bit hairier than a normal passenger would be